Hello, ladies and gentlemen of the jury. It is I, Emily Sophia, aka M Mighty Sophia, here to break down for you guys the latest episode of Better Call Saul entitled Gloves Off. So, spoiler alert, before I dive into the mad thick of things, as per the usual, I shall be bearing all in this review. And if there are any major points that I fail to address in this video, or Breaking Bad references that are not made because I know you guys love those, and I do too, be sure to comment it up. This is just the beginning of the conversation. It starts here and continues with you guys. So let us get into the business of this week. Now, this was yet another incredibly strong episode, also having the bonus of a keen focus on Mr. Mike and his job for Nacho. So it's really interesting to see how the characters that we're working with in Better Call Saul are not yet their Breaking Bad selves, but are slowly but surely making their respective ways into the places in which we find them in the original series. That is very strongly evidenced by Mike's plot, which takes up the majority of the hour. We do see some of the nuclear fallout of Jimmy's commercial experiment, but what we get to see with Mike is that he is not yet a full measures guy. He is still in a place of taking half measures, which is evidenced by the fact that he does not, in fact, kill Tuco Salamanca, but allows himself to get beat up by the guy, sends him to prison, and takes half of the $50K that he requested for the original job, which was to put a bullet through the crystal meth using scumbag's head. But, as Mike says, maybe it's not the best way to go, completely offing your partner like that, You're going to draw a lot of scrutiny from some people that you probably don't want to deal with, i.e. the other Salamancas and what have you. So Mike provides very scant reasons for his refusal to kill in this situation, but what he does craft is an incredibly creative little crime scene in which he makes himself the subject of the crime. He calls it in before it happens because the guy is a freaking wizard. He knows exactly the way this is going to go down. He knows exactly how to size up his enemy. And these are all skills that we get to see so gloriously come into play in Breaking Bad, but I think that the Mike of Breaking Bad probably would have done away with Tuco once and for all. But in this case, he's not quite risking that, and in fact sets himself up perfectly as the victim in this situation. He's the bait, hook, line, and sinker, gets the job done. But since this is indeed a half measure, Nacho only gives him $25,000. So, what do you know? But also, it was interesting to finally discover later into the episode that the scene that we saw at the very beginning with Mike, lumbering back in, spilling the cash out on the table and grabbing a bag of frozen peas or whatever, putting it against his face, and then when he takes it down, you see the purple mess that is encroached on his usually quite handsome mug. And yeah, that actually is what follows the events that take place at the end of the episode. So we start at the end and then we fill in the spaces. I like the pacing and the storytelling there. And of course, too, if you will recall, in that initial scene, Mike has this chain with these little boxing gloves on it, and that's something that he actually got off of Tuco. So that is proof that scene follows the events of the end. But yeah, it's really fascinating to see the sacrifices that Mike is currently making, and in that same vein, compromises. He is an incredibly smart, and capable dude. It was also cool to get to see him perusing guns from the same gentleman who sold Walter White a weapon once upon a time. Lawson, I believe is his name. I think I might have misstated it in one of my prior reviews, so I apologize for that. But yeah, it's super neat to see how Mike walks through this process, how he innovates and how he decides to, instead of going in for the kill and delivering the fatal bullet, make this guy go away. But not for long enough, I'm afraid. Unfortunately for a certain Mr. White and Mr. Pinkman. So, y'all know what I'm talking about, of course. At least I assume. If you are watching Better Call Saul just for its own merits, kudos to you. But also check out Breaking Bad. Please and thank you. But yeah. So Mike is the boss. But he is not necessarily operating in the same way that he does when we find him, a couple years down the road. So that much is clear. Now, another major highlight of this episode is seeing how Jimmy is fighting not so much to redeem himself, but to redeem Kimmy, who inevitably gets dragged down in the midst of his commercial conundrum. He tries to sell the partners and their counsel on this whole thing. Say like, hey, I saved all this money. Like, I've got the exact costs and everything. I did my own voiceover, yada, yada, yada. Pretty much nobody is having it. So instead of getting his ass handed to him on a silver platter, he discovers that, yes, he has stricken out once and twice. Third time is going to be the final time. And, he's pretty laissez-faire about his own position with Davis and Maine, but it's the fact that Kimmy is the one who stuck her neck out to get him the position in the first place. That is what things are really hinging on for him. So much of his sense of goodness and decency is invested in Kim's character, and that really is a testament to just how powerful and amazing of a woman she is to him, to her peers, and she's a great person. And Jimmy will do anything to ensure that everybody is fully convicted of that fact, and that every mistake at play here was his own, and that he did in fact dupe her, which sucks, which really, really sucks, because Jimmy can be so amazing. And Kim is so amazing. And the two of them combined together is just a magical force of unparalleled proportions. But at the same time, Jimmy just does not have quite enough of a care for his own well-being, only for acting upon his own initiative. He's not exactly a great team player, but he is, or at least wants to be, a great partner for Kim. And so he does everything within his power and within Kim's restrictions, of course, to make sure that he can, wipe the blame off of her name, put it all on him. He'll do whatever. He'll dangle from the edge of that cliff for as long as he has to. And that actually leads him to the house of none other than his mortal nemesis, Chuck, who he very angrily approaches in the middle of the night, but actually finds him in the midst of a panic attack of all things. So he is a bundled up little burrito man, and Jimmy takes compassion on him and actually waits out the storm all night, brings out the extra reinforcements, gets him a little bit of water, and then sits and waits. And the thing that is just so soul-crushing is that Chuck actually seems happily surprised to see Jimmy the next day, and then requests that he make some tea, and so the two of them get to talking, and then it becomes clear exactly what Jimmy is looking to do. And that's to make sure that Miss Kim Wexler is in everybody's good graces, as she always should be. because it all comes down to his own mistake. And then Chuck just takes that little situation and spins a magical web of wonderment and condemnation and horrible shittiness that, spirals right on out of control. But, I mean, man, I watched that entire showdown with just such a sense of, like, yes, and then no, because, I mean, finally, Jimmy is calling Chuck out on all of his bullshit. Because Chuck is always painting himself as the righteous one, and Jimmy as the little delinquent child to whom he must talk down and must condescend and who he must put in his place. And Chuck just has this way of deflecting everything, whether it's imaginary poisoning, electromagnetic radiation, or blame for the fact that he's actually a complete and utter shithead. Yes, I said it. I mean, okay, the guy is grappling with some crazy anxiety, madness, whether it's, all psychological, whatever. He's in a bad place, and things are rough for him. But I don't really have a lot of sympathy for the guy, because he will never set foot from his high horse. He will never, as Chuck begs him to, get down and roll around in the dirt, commit the felony of pushing Jimmy out of his position by punishing Kim, extorting this entire situation. And that is, that's precisely what Chuck is doing. It's precisely what he was doing. And if he would just admit to it, he and his brother could finally be equals, could finally see eye to eye. But no, Chuck takes that away from Jimmy. He robs him of it's not even a pleasure for Jimmy. You think that he wants this entire situation? Do you think that he wants to feel like the only thing he can do is back out of the law just to cling on to that one spot of goodness in his life that is Kim? I mean, it is such a horrendous backstabbing situation. And this is yet another scene that makes that so ridiculously clear. And I think that Chuck is going to be getting his just desserts real soon. I could talk for days about that entire exchange between the two of them, but Chuck is willing to do everything in his power to make sure that Jimmy walks that plank all on his lonesome. He's never going to be seen as the one pushing Jimmy in the first place, when really this is all what he's set into motion. At every turn, he has taken every opportunity to delegitimize what Jimmy has tried to build, and granted, the guy has failed a time or two. But if he actually reached out in support and felt and actually loved his brother, then God, they would not be in this sinkhole together. And yet here they are, pulling each other down into the belly of hell, I swear to you. So both of the major parts of this week's episode, super soul gripping, as usual, standard freaking procedure. I tip my hat to everyone who made this story possible and who is continuing to bring it to us. It's so good. So anything I happen to forget, please bring it up in the comments below. I love you guys so much, and as always, I will be back before you know it.